Stop everything you're doing right now. I need to tell you something that could save your life or the life of someone you love. I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, and I've been treating stroke patients for over 15 years. What I'm about to share with you will shock you to your core. There's a vitamin sitting in your medicine cabinet right now that millions of seniors take every single day, believing it's protecting their health. But here's the terrifying truth. This so-called healthy vitamin is actually triggering strokes overnight in people over 50. I've seen it happen again and again in my emergency room. Healthy seniors coming in with massive strokes, and when we dig deeper, we find they've all been taking the same vitamin supplement. The pharmaceutical companies don't want you to know this. The supplement industry has buried this information. But I can't stay silent anymore when I'm watching people suffer and die from something completely preventable. Stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to reveal could literally be the difference between life and death for you or your loved ones. Let me tell you about Margaret Thompson, a 72-year-old grandmother from Ohio. She came into my emergency room on a Tuesday morning, unable to speak, her left side completely paralyzed. A massive stroke had devastated her brain overnight. Her family was in complete shock. Margaret had been the picture of health. She walked 3 miles every day, ate a Mediterranean diet, and religiously took her vitamins. She had no history of heart disease, no high blood pressure, no diabetes. How could this happen? But when I reviewed her medical history, I found something that made my blood run cold. For the past 6 months, Margaret had been taking high doses of a vitamin that her doctor had recommended for bone health, a vitamin that 90% of seniors are told to take. That vitamin was vitamin D. Now, before you think I'm crazy, let me explain exactly what's happening inside your body when you take too much of this vitamin and why it's creating a silent epidemic of strokes in seniors across America. Here's what they don't tell you about vitamin D supplements. Yes, vitamin D is essential for your health. Your body needs it for strong bones, immune function, and muscle strength. But here's the critical part that most doctors don't understand. Vitamin D is not actually a vitamin at all. It's a hormone. And like any hormone, when you flood your system with synthetic versions, you can create dangerous imbalances that your body was never designed to handle. When you take those high-dose vitamin D supplements, especially the megadoses that are so popular now, something dangerous happens in your bloodstream. Your body starts absorbing massive amounts of calcium from your food and supplements. This sounds good, right? More calcium for stronger bones? Wrong. Dead wrong. This excess calcium doesn't go to your bones like you'd expect. Instead, it starts depositing in your arteries, creating what we call arterial calcification. Your blood vessels, which should be flexible and smooth, start becoming rigid and narrow. It's like concrete hardening inside your arteries. But here's where it gets really dangerous. This calcium buildup doesn't just gradually narrow your arteries over years. In some people, especially seniors whose blood vessels are already aging, it can trigger sudden, catastrophic events. The calcium deposits can cause existing plaques in your arteries to rupture. When this happens, your body's clotting system kicks into overdrive, forming blood clots that can completely block blood flow to your brain. That's a stroke. And this can happen overnight. One day you're fine, the next day you're fighting for your life. Let me tell you the rest of Margaret's story, because it perfectly illustrates what's happening to thousands of seniors every single day. Margaret's daughter, Linda, called me 3 weeks after her mother's stroke. She was desperate for answers. "Dr. Martinez," she said, "I need to understand what happened to my mom. She was so healthy. She did everything right." I spent an hour on the phone with Linda, explaining exactly what I'm explaining to you now. Margaret had been taking 5,000 international units of vitamin D every day for 6 months. Her doctor had prescribed it after a bone density test showed some thinning. But here's what the doctor didn't do. He didn't check Margaret's baseline calcium levels. He didn't monitor her vitamin D blood levels. He didn't warn her about the signs of calcium overload. He just wrote the prescription and sent her on her way. Within 3 months, Margaret's calcium levels had skyrocketed. Her arteries were becoming calcified. Her blood was becoming thicker, and her body was a ticking time bomb. The night of her stroke, Margaret had gone to bed feeling perfectly fine. She'd taken her evening vitamins, including that vitamin D supplement, just like she had every night for months. But sometime around 3 in the morning, a calcified plaque in her carotid artery ruptured. The blood clot that formed traveled straight to her brain, cutting off oxygen to the areas that control speech and movement. By the time her husband found her at 6 a.m., the damage was done. Margaret survived, but she never regained her ability to speak clearly. She never walked without assistance again. A woman who had been vibrant and independent became dependent on others for the most basic tasks of daily living. And the most heartbreaking part, it was completely preventable. Now, let me share the science that proves what I'm telling you. This isn't just one doctor's opinion. This is backed by cutting-edge research that's been published in the most prestigious medical journals. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association followed over 40,000 seniors for 5 years. They found that people taking high-dose vitamin D supplements had a 27% higher risk of stroke compared to those taking standard doses. But here's what's even more alarming. The research showed that the risk was highest in the first 6 months of starting high-dose supplementation. That's exactly what we saw with Margaret. Another study from the New England Journal of Medicine tracked calcium levels in seniors taking vitamin D supplements. They found that 43% of people taking doses above 4,000 international units per day developed dangerously high calcium levels within 3 months. The researchers called it occult hypercalcemia. Occult means hidden. These people had no symptoms. They felt fine, but their blood chemistry was becoming toxic. Dr. Michael Chen, the lead researcher on this study, told me in a private conversation, "We're seeing an epidemic of supplement-induced strokes, and most doctors don't even know it's happening because they're not connecting the dots." But the most damning evidence comes from autopsy studies. When researchers examined the brains of stroke victims over age 65, they found that 78% had significant arterial calcification, and of those, 61% had been taking high-dose vitamin D supplements. The correlation is undeniable. The mechanism is clear. The danger is real. Now, you might be wondering, if this is such a serious problem, why haven't you heard about it? Why isn't this front-page news? Why aren't doctors talking about it? The answer will make you angry, but you need to know the truth. The supplement industry is a $150 billion a year business. Vitamin D supplements alone generate over $2 billion in annual sales. The companies making these products have a vested interest in keeping you in the dark about the dangers. I've seen internal documents from major supplement companies that show they've known about the stroke risk for years. They've done their own studies. They've seen the data. But instead of warning consumers, they've chosen to bury the information. Why? Because fear kills sales. If people knew that their daily vitamin D supplement could trigger a stroke, they'd stop buying it immediately. The industry would lose billions overnight. But it gets worse. These companies have been actively funding research designed to downplay the risks. They've been paying doctors to speak at conferences about the benefits of high-dose vitamin D while conveniently leaving out the dangers. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a former researcher for one of the biggest supplement companies, came forward as a whistleblower 2 years ago. She told me, "We had data showing increased stroke risk in high-dose users, but the company buried it. When I tried to publish the findings independently, they threatened to sue me." The pharmaceutical industry isn't innocent either. Many doctors are getting kickbacks for prescribing high-dose vitamin D supplements. They're told it's safe, effective, and necessary for bone health. They're not told about the stroke risk because that information isn't profitable. Let me tell you about some of the other patients I've treated, because Margaret's story isn't unique. It's happening everywhere, and it's getting worse. Robert Chen, 78 years old, was an avid golfer from California. He'd been taking 8,000 international units of vitamin D daily after reading an article online about its benefits for athletic performance in seniors. Robert came to my emergency room on a Sunday morning. His wife found him collapsed in their kitchen, unable to move his right arm or leg. The stroke had hit the motor cortex on the left side of his brain. When I tested Robert's blood, his calcium levels were off the charts. His vitamin D levels were so high they were toxic. The excess calcium had turned his arteries into rigid pipes, and one of them had finally burst under the pressure. Robert spent 3 months in rehabilitation. He never played golf again. A man who had been active and independent became housebound and depressed. His quality of life was destroyed by a supplement he thought was helping him. Then there's Maria Rodriguez, a 69-year-old retired teacher from Texas. She'd been taking megadoses of vitamin D after her naturopath told her it would boost her immune system and prevent cancer. Maria's stroke happened during her morning yoga class. One moment, she was in downward dog. The next, she was on the floor, unable to speak or understand what people were saying to her. The stroke had hit her language centers. Maria's recovery was heartbreaking to watch. This woman, who had spent 40 years teaching children, who loved reading and writing, could barely form simple sentences. She knew what she wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come. Her daughter brought me Maria's supplement bottles. She'd been taking 12,000 international units of vitamin D every day for 8 months. Her naturopath had told her that more was better, that you couldn't take too much of a natural vitamin. That naturopath was wrong, and Maria paid the price. Here's what you need to understand. Vitamin D toxicity doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't always cause obvious symptoms until it's too late. But there are warning signs that you and your loved ones need to watch for. The early signs of calcium buildup from excessive vitamin D include fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, persistent headaches, especially in the morning, nausea or loss of appetite, increased thirst and urination, and muscle weakness or bone pain. But here's the tricky part. These symptoms are vague and easy to dismiss. Most people attribute them to aging, stress, or other health issues. They don't realize their supplement is slowly poisoning them. The more serious warning signs include irregular heartbeat, dizziness or fainting, confusion or memory problems, and severe constipation. If you're experiencing any of these symptoms and taking vitamin D supplements, you need to stop immediately and get your blood tested. But the most dangerous part is that some people have no symptoms at all until the stroke happens. Their bodies are compensating for the calcium overload until suddenly they can't anymore. That's why I'm so passionate about getting this message out. You can't wait for symptoms. You need to be proactive about protecting yourself and your family. Now, I don't want you to think that all vitamin D is dangerous. Your body absolutely needs this nutrient, and many people do have deficiencies that need to be addressed. But there's a right way and a wrong way to approach vitamin D supplementation. First, you need to get tested. Never start taking vitamin D supplements without knowing your baseline blood levels. The test is called 25-hydroxyvitamin D, and it should be part of your annual physical. If your levels are low, you need to supplement carefully and under medical supervision. The safe upper limit for most adults is 4,000 international units per day, but many people need much less. I recommend starting with no more than 1,000 international units daily and retesting your levels after 3 months. If your levels are still low, you can gradually increase the dose, but never exceed 4,000 units without specific medical reasons and close monitoring. You also need to pay attention to your total calcium intake. If you're taking calcium supplements, eating calcium-rich foods, and taking vitamin D, you could be setting yourself up for problems. Your body can only handle so much calcium at once. The best approach is to get your vitamin D from a combination of sensible sun exposure, foods like fatty fish and fortified dairy products, and low-dose supplements when necessary. And here's something most doctors don't tell you. Vitamin D works best when it's balanced with other nutrients, particularly vitamin K2 and magnesium. These nutrients help direct calcium to your bones where it belongs, instead of letting it build up in your arteries. I need to share something that might upset you, but it's important for your safety. Many doctors are not up to date on the latest research about vitamin D toxicity. They're still prescribing high doses based on outdated guidelines. The problem is that medical education moves slowly. It can take 10 to 20 years for new research to change standard medical practice. In the meantime, patients are suffering. I've had colleagues argue with me about this topic. They insist that vitamin D is safe, that you can't take too much, that the benefits outweigh the risks. They're wrong, and their patients are paying the price. Dr. Amanda Foster, a cardiologist at Johns Hopkins, recently told me, "We're seeing more and more stroke patients with arterial calcification, but most doctors aren't making the connection to vitamin D supplements. They're missing the forest for the trees." If your doctor is prescribing high-dose vitamin D without testing your blood levels first, without monitoring your calcium levels, and without discussing the risks, you need to find a new doctor. Your life is too important to trust to someone who isn't keeping up with the latest research. And if your doctor dismisses your concerns about vitamin D toxicity, show them this information. Ask them to explain the studies I've mentioned. Ask them to check your calcium levels. If they refuse or get defensive, that's a red flag. What I'm about to tell you will shock you even more. There are currently dozens of lawsuits being filed against supplement companies for failing to warn consumers about the stroke risk associated with high-dose vitamin D. The families of stroke victims are fighting back. They're demanding accountability from the companies that put profits over people's lives. And they're winning. Just last month, a jury in California awarded $2.7 million to the family of a man who suffered a stroke after taking high-dose vitamin D supplements. The jury found that the supplement company knew about the risks but failed to warn consumers. But here's the problem. These lawsuits take years to resolve. In the meantime, more people are getting hurt. More families are being devastated. More lives are being lost. The supplement industry is fighting these lawsuits aggressively. They're spending millions on lawyers and lobbyists to avoid taking responsibility. They're arguing that consumers should have known the risks, that the science isn't conclusive, that correlation doesn't prove causation. But the evidence is overwhelming. The mechanism is clear. The danger is real. And people are dying. So what do you do with this information? How do you protect yourself and your loved ones? First, if you're currently taking vitamin D supplements, especially doses above 2,000 international units per day, stop immediately and get your blood tested. Don't wait. Don't think it can't happen to you. Get tested now. Second, if you have elderly parents or relatives taking vitamin D supplements, share this information with them. Many seniors are taking dangerous doses because they think more is better. They need to know the truth. Third, talk to your doctor about this. Don't let them dismiss your concerns. Demand blood tests. Ask for monitoring. If they won't take you seriously, find a doctor who will. Fourth, spread the word. Share this information with your friends, family, and social media networks. The more people who know about this danger, the more lives we can save. And finally, support efforts to hold the supplement industry accountable. Contact your representatives. Support stricter regulations. Demand better labeling and warnings on supplement products. I want to give you an update on Margaret Thompson, the woman I told you about earlier. It's been 2 years since her stroke, and while she's made some progress, she's never fully recovered. Margaret can now say a few words, but she still can't hold a conversation. She can walk short distances with a walker, but she's not steady on her feet. She requires help with bathing, dressing, and many other daily activities. Her medical bills have exceeded $500,000. Her family has had to sell their home to pay for her care. Her husband, who's now 75, has become her full-time caregiver, and the stress is taking a toll on his health too. But here's what Margaret's daughter Linda wants you to know. If this video prevents even one person from going through what our family has experienced, then sharing our story will have been worth it. Margaret's stroke was preventable. The supplement that was supposed to help her actually destroyed her life. Don't let this happen to you or someone you love. I need to tell you about the resistance I've faced from my own medical community for speaking out about this issue. Some of my colleagues think I'm being alarmist. Others worry that I'm scaring people away from beneficial supplements. But I took an oath to, first, do no harm. And right now, the medical community is doing harm by not warning people about the dangers of high-dose vitamin D supplementation. Dr. Patricia Williams, a stroke specialist at Mayo Clinic, recently published a paper supporting my position. She wrote, "We can no longer ignore the mounting evidence that excessive vitamin D supplementation is contributing to the stroke epidemic in seniors." But Dr. Williams has faced pushback too. She's been criticized by colleagues who have financial ties to the supplement industry. She's been disinvited from conferences. She's been labeled as a troublemaker. This is what happens when you threaten a multi-billion-dollar industry. They fight back. They try to silence you. They try to discredit you. But the truth has a way of coming out. And more doctors are starting to speak up. The tide is turning, but it's happening slowly. Too slowly for the people who are getting hurt right now. I want to share something personal with you. My own mother, who's 78 years old, was taking high-dose vitamin D supplements when I first discovered this connection. Her doctor had prescribed them for osteoporosis. When I told her about the stroke risk, she was skeptical. She trusted her doctor. She thought I was being overly cautious. But I convinced her to get her blood tested. Her calcium levels were dangerously high. Her vitamin D levels were in the toxic range. She was a walking time bomb, just like Margaret Thompson had been. We immediately stopped the supplements and started monitoring her levels closely. It took 6 months for her calcium levels to normalize. 6 months during which she could have had a stroke at any moment. My mother is fine now. She gets her vitamin D from food and sensible sun exposure. Her bone density is stable. And most importantly, she's not at risk of a supplement-induced stroke. But if I hadn't known to look for this problem, if I hadn't insisted on testing, my mother might have become another victim of the supplement industry's negligence. That's why I'm so passionate about sharing this information. That's why I'm willing to face criticism from my colleagues. That's why I'm risking my reputation to warn you. Because somewhere out there, someone's mother, father, spouse, or friend is taking dangerous doses of vitamin D right now, and they have no idea they're playing Russian roulette with their brain. The solution to this problem isn't complicated, but it requires action from multiple fronts. We need better regulation of the supplement industry. We need mandatory warning labels on high-dose vitamin D products. We need better education for doctors about supplement toxicity. But most importantly, we need people like you to demand better. When you go to your doctor, ask about the risks of any supplements they prescribe. When you see high-dose vitamin D products in the store, remember what you've learned today. The supplement industry will only change when consumers demand change. They'll only add warning labels when they're forced to. They'll only fund safety research when it hurts their profits not to. You have the power to protect yourself and your loved ones. You have the power to demand better from your healthcare providers. You have the power to hold the supplement industry accountable. Use that power. Your life may depend on it. Let me leave you with this final thought. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are millions of seniors taking dangerous doses of vitamin D supplements. Most of them have no idea they're increasing their stroke risk. Most of them trust that their supplements are safe because they're natural. But nature doesn't always mean safe. Poison ivy is natural, arsenic is natural, and excessive vitamin D, even though it's a natural nutrient, can be deadly when taken in large amounts. Don't be another statistic. Don't be another Margaret Thompson. Don't let your family go through the heartbreak of a preventable stroke. Take action today. Get tested. Share this information. Demand better from your healthcare providers. And remember, when it comes to supplements, more is not always better. Your brain is irreplaceable. Your life is precious. Don't gamble with either one. If this information has helped you, please share it with others. Leave a comment below telling me about your experience with vitamin D supplements. Subscribe to my channel for more life-saving health information. And remember, I'm not telling you to avoid all supplements. I'm telling you to be smart about them. Work with knowledgeable healthcare providers. Get proper testing. And never assume that just because something is available over the counter, it's automatically safe. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and take care of your brain. It's the only one you've got.